Welcome to the Minds of Money 5 at 5 show. This week, we are sponsored by Rincon Resources, Tesoro Resources, and Culpeo Minerals. And as always, we're brought to you in association with the Resource Global Network. For those of you who don't know, the 5 at 5 was started 5 guests at 5 p.m. back in April 2020. It was intended as a stopgap weekly 60-minute show, which would bring the industry together whilst we were dealing with the lockdowns and COVID-19. 16 months on, we are now on episode 89. So welcome to episode 89, and I hope you enjoy it. This is part of our Minds of Money Online Global Connect conference that's actually taking place at the moment. And there will be one more conference online of that nature between the 19th and the 21st of October. My name's Simon Carr, and I look after Western Australia on behalf of Minds of Money and also the Asia Pacific countries. A couple of quick announcements. We're really keen to make this as interactive as possible. We're very keen for people to ask questions if they want to, for us to put those questions to the speakers. Have your videos switched on if you feel like it. Raise your hands, virtually raise your hands, submit questions via the chat function, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. Now, as they say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so feel free to grab a beer, a glass of wine, a glass of water, a tea, a coffee, whatever you like, but relax, sit back and enjoy the next hour or so. We've got an ASX themed conference talk today, and we've got a great lineup of guests. So we have Gary Harvey, the Chief Executive Officer of Rincon Resources. We've got Seth Reeves, who's the Managing Director of Tesoro Resources. Max Tuesley, the Managing Director of Culpeo Minerals. We also have other industry experts, Deborah Caudle, Managing Director and Regional Co-Head of Mining, Metals, Industries, Finance for Asia Pacific for Societe Generale. And we also had John Forwood, the Chief Investment Officer of Lowell Resources Fund Management. So what we want to do initially is just have a bit of a chat about the state of the industry generally, about any things in the news that people have picked up on or any hot topics that people want to have a general chat about. And I'd like to start, please, by coming to you, Deborah. What's caught your attention this week?
Sure, thanks, Simon. And perhaps it might not be a single news story, but certainly coming to the end of the earnings season in Australia at the moment, there's been numerous headlines coming from the mining companies. And I think one thing that I've really noted is a common thread around decarbonisation that's been coming across in the news. And particularly from Societe Generale's perspective, we've been supporting the energy transition and decarbonisation in the mining sector for quite some time. And many of the announcements accompanying this year's results have highlighted just how far the mining industry has come in terms of the strategic shift to address the transition to a low carbon economy. We've seen bumper profits from the iron ore miners, from BHP, Rio Tinto, FMG, but alongside those announcements have been things such as BHP's exit from oil and gas, BHP and Rio investing in future-facing commodities, potash and lithium respectively, and FMG really reinforcing their strategy around becoming a global resources and renewables company. So I think we're really just seeing decarbonisation influencing much of the activity across the mining sector. And whilst we've seen this strategic shift coming through in many of these headlines, there's clearly still a long way to go to deliver on these strategies. And I expect going forward that we'll see increasing exploration spend on copper, nickel, lithium, all of these metals that are required to support the energy transition, as well as M&A activity in that space. So I think we're going to see greater investment across the mining and metals value chain, and from different players from upstream and downstream in that value chain as well. We recently saw H2 Green Steel in Sweden, so looking to produce green steel, and they did a Series A equity fundraising, and Mercedes-Benz and Scania both came into that fundraising. And we've also seen mining companies moving downstream. IGO with the acquisition of the stake in Tianqi Lithium Australia, giving them exposure to lithium hydroxide production. So I think there's just some of the headlines and the news stories that have been capturing my attention, perhaps in the past week, but also just over the past month, particularly across that earnings season.
That's brilliant. I think it's something that a lot of people forget about is the fact that if people are mining for things like lithium and copper and things like that, then there are ecological benefits and advantages for people doing that, and people see mining as this villain of the environment. And yet the biggest topics that we're covering in our conferences right now are sustainability and the environment, and that's what everybody's trying to achieve. I was just interested there in terms of green steel. Could you elaborate on that at all? That sounds very interesting. I hadn't picked that up myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually, well, we're working as advisor to a company called H2 Green Steel, which is about developing a project based on green hydrogen used in the steel making process. And we're seeing this increasingly across the space. Also with Fortescue as well, they're talking about producing green iron, green steel. So again, coming back to renewables power being used to produce hydrogen that's then used into these new steel making processes. So moving away from the blast furnaces and more into direct reduction style technologies where you can actually use hydrogen, green hydrogen, as the reducing agent.
Superb. Well, that sounds very interesting. One to certainly look out for. Thanks very much, Deborah. We'll come to you again when it comes to some of the presentations that they're going to give later, and ask you for some thoughts and questions and comments on that. But I'd just like to move, if I may, now to John Forwood from Lowell Resources. John, what's your highlight of the week, or what's your story that you've picked up on this week?
Oh, thanks, Simon. I've just got a couple of slides here to really pick up on the points that Deborah made in terms of the boom in the mining industry. And I'm not getting the right slide, but just picking up on her point about the money that's being made, particularly amongst the big miners. We've seen BHP, Rio, and FMG in aggregate declare record profits and record dividends. And just interesting, overnight, Twiggy Forrest trousered, I think it was nearly 4 billion in dividends as a result of the FMG result, and turned around the next day and upped his bid for Noront nickel in Canada. So thanks Elaine. Yeah, so some of that 10 billion that US that FMG made is being recycled back into that bid for Noront, which he's trumped BHP at the moment. It looks like he's trumped them for that Eagle's Nest deposit. So I think that just maybe illustrates a couple of points that both the profits are being, at least to some extent, recycled into M&A, and we expect that to be a broader theme, an increasing theme over the coming year or 24, 36 months, that these monies that are being made will be deployed back into the sector, and there'll be a trickle-down effect in that the really big boys will then go and look at swallowing up some of the more intermediate guys. And I think nickel is perhaps a real focus of activity at the moment, and we're seeing independents, Western areas, even Mincor, being spoken about in terms of M&A activity. And the reason for that, as Deborah said, is the decarbonisation theme, and the expectation that nickel will be in shortage. But I think we'll see that. We'll see that across other sectors. The gold mining sector here in Australia, I think the average all-in sustaining cost last quarter was around $1,400 an ounce. So, the Aussie gold miners are making, $1,000 an ounce, not paying nearly as big a dividends as the big iron ore miners. And, I would expect that we'll see, with the depletion of reserves, we'll see some of that money recycled into M&A activity. Just a slightly related point is, and something that's sort of as an old hard rock exploration geo, I'm quite, not unhappy to see is the spend, going into mineral exploration. It's a bit of a sad story by contrast in oil and gas exploration. Basically, meters drilled in mineral exploration has doubled over the last 6 years, whereas the petroleum spend has halved over that same period. And I think that's also related to the decarbonisation theme, that people are looking for, not just gold, but nickel, copper, lithium, and oil and gas is certainly, from that data, is certainly on the nose.
Brilliant. That graph, by the way, that shows a really steep increase of the drilling activity in the last 12 months. And it looks, it's great news for all of us in mining, in the various ways in which we're involved. How does that compare to previous years going back further than the graph was? Are we seeing, record highs in terms of exploration at the moment, or where does that sit in the wider scheme of things, John?
Oh, look, I didn't get the data going. That's data from the Australian Bureau of Stats. I didn't get the data going back to, the sort of 2000s mining boom. I would think it's probably starting to get up to a similar level that we saw perhaps, pre-2008 and maybe again around, 2010, 2011. But I'm not sure if it's actually in the record territory.
Getting close, we think.
Yep.
Yeah. No, great stuff. Thank you very much. We'll definitely come back and get some of your thoughts on some of these projects that we're going to hear about. The first project that we're going to talk about today is Rincon Resources. And that is very much WA-based projects that we're going to hear about. The Chief Executive Officer is Gary Harvey. Gary has more than 25 years experience in gold and nickel exploration. He's successfully led teams at various levels. He's previously held senior exploration roles with Johnson's Well Mining, Forestania Gold, and a technical support role with Fortescue Metals Group as well. Gary was most recently the exploration manager for Barra Resources, was responsible for the exploration and development of their gold assets, and he left the company following the transition to underground mining at their Burbanks Gold project, and is now with Rincon Resources. So I'd like to hand over to Gary to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Simon. Elaine, you're going to pop up my short presentation, please. Great. So, look, Rincon Resources are a West Australian-based gold exploration company. We're a gold and copper focused. We've got 3 prospective projects in Western Australia. The South Telfer Gold and Copper Project, We have 500 square kilometres of ground in the Paterson province, adjacent and along strike from the Telfer gold mine. And we have 50 kilometres of prospective and underexplored Telfer host geology. We've just recently completed our maiden 5,000 metres of RC drilling at our Hasties prospect. That's our #1 prospect at this stage. And we're about to embark on a second 5,000 metre program late October. Our second project is the Laven Gold Project. As the name suggests, this is in the heart of the Laverton goldfields. It's a tier 1 location. There's been past production of 25 million ounces produced from Laverton region. We have over 6 kilometres of prospective banded iron formation stratigraphy, which is a favourable and prospective geological unit known to host and or be associated with several gold deposits in the region. And we've been testing that banded iron formation earlier this year with some air core drilling, where we identified some anomalous gold trends for follow-up. Our third and final project is the Kiwitara copper gold project. Now, this is a remote project. It's around central Australia. It's about 800 k's west of Alice Springs. It's a frontier exploration play for us. It's IHCG copper and orogenic gold type of deposits that we're aiming to explore for. And we just under 200 square kilometres of ground in that area. For the first 6 months of this year, we've been busy doing some drilling and also laying the groundwork for our target testing. We've been doing a lot of geophysics and geophysical reprocessing. And through that process, we've actually identified up to 40 drill targets, which will be which will inform our exploration programs over the next 12 months at least. We've committed to 10,000 drill metres at Telfer this year. As I just stated, 5,000 metres of that's already been done. Got another 5,000 metres to come, and I'm pretty sure that based on success, we'll continue to drill there ongoing for the next 12 months. And we also have a strong cash position of 4.4. So just zooming into South Telfer, this is our #1 project. You can see there our main prospect, Hasties. There's a rock chip there with exposed copper oxide mineralisation. We've got this is a prospect that was previously drilled by Newcrest Mining back in 1994, and very good intersections came out of that drilling, which we are now following up. And we're confident that we, with a certain level of drilling, that we can define an oxide resource amenable to open pit mining here in the not too distant future. Following our first 5,000 metres of drilling, which we completed 2 weeks ago, and the results of that drilling are about 5 weeks away, we've committed to our phase 2 drill program. Now, this is an extensional drill program. It'll be drilling along strike from the existing drilling that we've just done, but also at depth. And if you have a look at the cross section there, you can see that there's a drill target 300 metres below Hasties. Now, this is a fresh rock target. It's associated with an anticlinal fold hinge that's been intruded by a dolerite sill. Now, this is analogous not only to Telfer style mineralisation, but also to the north of Telfer, there's a deposit called Magnum, which is held by Antipa Minerals. Now, that deposit's about 339,000 ounces, and this target is of similar geology and structurally similar. And so, look, we'll be testing this target towards the end of October, and I really can't wait to drill these deep diamond holes to test that target. It's a real upside for this project. Next slide, thanks. And just touching on our final 2 projects, we did some air core drilling at Laverton in April, and we identified some multiple zones of low-level gold mineralisation, particularly associated with that banded iron formation that I was talking to you about. This has given us some encouragement now to follow up on that. And in addition to that, we've also been developing some additional targets from mapping. And so, look, we'll be extending our drill work programs at Laven next year, starting from the second quarter probably. And the third project is our Kirikara copper gold project. We've just completed a fairly extensive reprocessing of geophysical data, and our consultants have identified 2 very prospective drill targets for us, located near our Pikali prospect. Now, Pikali is an existing prospect that was drilled by Ashburton Minerals back in 2004, and you can see some of the very good copper intersections there in the blue box. 32 metres at 0.46% copper and 64 metres at 0.39% copper. So the mineralisation is there. The targets we've identified are actually adjacent to this drilling, and we're actually in the process of planning 2 very deep diamond holes to test those targets and some RC drilling, and we'll look to start that work hopefully from March next year. That's it for Rincon Resources.
That's fantastic. You've been very, very busy,
Yeah,
Gary. And yeah, just sitting back and obviously now waiting for those results, which will prove to be very, very interesting. Deborah, did you have any questions for Gary?
I think in terms of what Gary was saying, certainly, as you say, you know, it's about waiting for those results at the moment to really identify the path forward, and you know, just thinking about that exploration plan for FY22, and was curious as to what his budget was for this year.
Yeah, so look, as I said, we're fully funded. We've got 4 million in the tin at the moment. The next 12 months, we're probably looking to spend around 3.5 million on all our programs if they go to plan. And look, having said that, we're fully funded till second quarter, at least second quarter of next year, and that'll see us do at least 3 to 4 drill programs.
Great, thanks.
That's great news. And John, any thoughts from you on Gary's presentation?
Yeah, look, that was Gary. You have some very impressive historical intersections there at South Telfer, the Hasty project.
Yeah,
and you know, and I'm sure Newcrest would be at least having second thoughts about having, you know, I'm not sure how you actually acquired the ground, but you know, they walked away from Javier and now they're back there.
yeah,
I'm sure they'll, you know, be having second thoughts about something that's, you know, much closer to Telfer than Javier is. I'd be interested just in the history of, you know, how you came to get hold of such an interesting project.
Look, you know, that's a good question. And Zeff in the little box down there could probably enlighten you on the history of the acquisition of that project. But what I can say is, like many of the areas around Telfer, you know, Newcrest Mining did go through a phase of relinquishment. You know, a lot of these tenements, they have a lifespan, and you've got to go through your prioritization and what should you keep and what should you let go. They obviously did that in a period where they were having some issues with the mill, I believe. And so, you know, our ground, as well as other ground, like a lot of that ground's been picked up by Antipa and Greatland Gold. And I didn't get that. And so, you know, I think when that relinquishment came through, the ground was picked up by a prospector. At least the last 10 years has been held by a prospector, and you know, through a successful negotiation between that prospector and my directors, it was able to come into Rincon's hands. So, look, we hope to be a beneficiary of the success that Greatland Gold, you know, and Antipa, you know, we want to be just like that. You know, if we can show Newcrest that they gave away something they shouldn't have, or let go something they shouldn't have, then that's a good position for us to be in.
Yep, for sure.
Superb. Well, yeah, fantastic project. I know you've been talking to lots of people on the online Connect conference, and if you've got any spare slots, then I'm sure you're available if anyone would like to contact Gary and find out a little bit more. He's one of the exhibitors on our online Connect conference taking place alongside this. So that brings us on to Zeff Reeves, who's just been name checked over there as well. Now, Zeff is managing director of the Chile-focused Tesoro Resources. Zeff's a geologist with over 20 years of experience in the resource sector. He's worked on resource projects from greenfields exploration, discovery, definition and feasibility, construction, production, all the way through closure. Zeff has had extensive experience as well, specifically in South America, primarily Brazil and Chile. He's held management roles with ASX listed Culpeo Metals, previously Metallum, Cleveland Mining, Ashburton Minerals, and a number of private companies. So to tell you all about Tesoro Resources, just going to hand you over to Seth Reeves.
Thanks, Simon, and thanks to Mines and Money for providing the opportunity to talk at the conference, and it's been quite enjoyable so far. So well done to you guys. So yeah, Tesoro is a Chilean-focused gold company. We're advancing El Zorro, which is Chile's newest gold project, probably the most significant gold discovery that's been made in Chile for a good couple of years. And it's a quite unique deposit in terms of its geology for Chile. And you know, we are very optimistic about pushing the project through from where it is today to growing it and pushing it through into development and ultimately production. So I just quickly got these couple of slides, just an overview of the project area. So it gives you a feel for what the landscape looks like. It's in the Atacama Desert. It's about 800 kilometres north of Santiago. We sit on government crown land. We don't impact any communities directly. And we have obviously lots of rocks sticking out of the ground, which makes it quite easy for our geologists to identify outcropping gold mineralisation. So I'll just skip through our normal disclaimer. So just so you get an idea of where we sit, we're in a prolific mineral region of Chile. It's in the Atacama region. It's about 130 kilometres north of Culpeo, and the Tenera Deposit sits in the middle of our concession holding, which is about 550 square kilometres of what we think is prospective geology for intrusive related gold systems. So I mentioned that was pretty unique. I don't know of any other intrusive related gold systems in Chile. So this is analogous to the Tintina province in North America, where deposits like Fort Knox and Pogo, Brewery Creek are, and it is offered a good, I guess, commercial advantage to Tesoro to go and look for these once we figured out what Tenera was. And so we've substantially increased our ground position since becoming involved in the project. Obviously sits in as I said, a prolific mineral district, multiple large mines in the region, including some fairly well-known companies, and probably most notable for us is a large ground position that's been picked up by Yamana Gold adjacent to or directly west of our concession holdings, and they picked that up off the back of the work that we've been doing on. I think they probably are having a look over the fence at some of the work that we've been doing, and encouraged about what the region might have to offer in terms of more of the same. But we think we've got the best of the ground. We've only explored about 2% of it so far, and that work's been focused at the Tenera Deposit, where we defined an initial 660,000 ounce gold resource, aiming for a sort of bulk mine, open pit mining scenario. We're currently expanding that. We can see a pretty clear pathway to a significant resource upgrade later this year. And we're in the midst of a 60,000 metre drill program at the moment, with a strong cash position of just over 13 million at the end of the last quarter. So a quick overview of the Tenera Deposit. As I mentioned, that maiden resource of 660,000 ounces, but we've starting to have a look at this from an economic perspective. It behaves quite well when throwing some different optimized pit shells at it. They're shown on this section here. You can see the ounces that are reported into each of those pit shells at different gold prices. So really that's just a function of where this ore body, I guess, resides in space, and a lot of it's near surface. It's outcropping, offers a potential attractive stripping ratios particularly to start off with. And there's some really nice higher grade ore zones throughout the deposit, and some of the major fault zones that cut through Tenera. So we're currently drilling away, filling the gaps in and adding additional ounces to the deposit. It's not closed off, it's open at depth. We've drilled over 400 metres deep so far, and it's still well mineralised at depth. It's open in all directions, and we're starting to see some really nice material come out of holes drilled to the southern part of the deposit, with some good wide drill intercepts that have just been announced to market. So the team's busily drilling away there, trying to expand that area. But really the next sort of steps for us is focused on delivering that expanded resource and knocking a lot more of that resource into an indicated category, which will then form the basis for a scoping study later on in the year, which will really start to demonstrate the low cost economics that we think a gold deposit in this part of the world can deliver. Obviously, we've got some fantastic infrastructure to leverage off. There's power nearby, low power, indicative power costs of 12 to 17 cents per kilowatt hour, so substantially less than some of the operating gold mines here in Western Australia, which are probably up around 25 to 30 cents if they're running off diesel power generation. And the other really exciting thing or attractive thing for Tenera is the metallurgy. So we've done some initial met work, really good high recoveries at a fairly coarse grind size. So looking at a 200 micron grind size up to 95% recovery, a lot of gold reporting to gravity. So it starts to offer optionality around how you process the material to save operational costs, which, you know, you start to look at things like single stage crushing, SAG milling as opposed to ball milling, and obviously early cash flows coming out of high gravity recoveries. So starting to tick all the boxes that there's actually a real deposit here and a potential to build a mine. So we're just working through to the next stage to expand that resource to a size that we think is going to support and warrant the investment decision to build a mine in the not too distant future. So just quickly, outside of Tenera, multiple deposits, as I mentioned before, off that photo, you can see that there's rock sticking out of the ground everywhere, so the geos are able to get on the ground and look at it. Where we see the host rocks, which are tonalite intrusions, and they're hit by the north-south fault systems, which host a lot of the mineralisation at Tenera. We generally find gold mineralisation at surface, and off the back of that, we've delineated other targets such as Buzzard in the south, Toro Gordo, Tenera East, Drone Hill and Toro Blanco to the north. But we're particularly interested in Tenera East, Drone Hill and Toro Blanco. That's where we think they're all part of the same Tenera mineralised system and most likely connected to Tenera. We've had some initial drill success at Tenera East. That sits in the hanging wall of the main deposit. So that's going to offer some real advantages in terms of the economics of the deposit and stripping ratios and so on. And likewise with Drone Hill, we think that sits in the footwall underneath the main Tenera deposit. Everything's dipping east, so Drone Hill's down in the footwall. Initial positive drill results coming out of there. So we've currently got a couple of drill rigs at Tenera East drilling, hoping to delineate additional resources. We've just started drilling again at Drone Hill. And we've got some drilling planned for Toro Blanco. And in the middle of it all is Tenera, which, you know, we can see a pretty clear pathway to a quite a substantial gold resource at Tenera sitting in the middle of it all. So our exploration team, they're super excited about what they're seeing. They think that they're starting to give me messages that Tenera might not be it. It could be the edges of a larger system. So they're going to try and prove that, I hope, over the coming months with some drilling into these other targets, and it's going to be quite an exciting sort of 6 to 12 months as this deposit grows. So that's a quick summary of Tesoro and the El Zorro Gold Project. We've obviously been very busy. We've put about 70,000 metres of drilling into this so far, and we're in the midst of a 60,000 metre drill program now, so plenty of news to come.
Brilliant, Zeff. Again, very busy, like you say. I love the name as well, El Zorro. That's a great name. There's some questions here from Simon, a chap called Simon, who knows a lot about this project by the looks of things. He's asked a number of questions. I'm just going to try and sort of combine them because you did cover a lot of this in your talk. But he asks about the hanging wall zone at Tenera East. He asks about the footwall of the deposit at Drone Hill. He asks about Buzzard. What are the plans for Buzzard? And he also is just interested to know, like you've covered, how much more drilling you've got planned for Tenera. So, yeah, in a kind of a nutshell, he's interested in those specific points of your project.
Yeah, sure. So this section can probably explain a bit of it. So in the middle of this section is the Tenera Deposit. It's got some recent drill results which aren't included in that initial resource, and obviously they're very attractive. But over in this, everything's dipping to the east. So up in this area, we picked up some more of the host rocks, which is at Tenera East. So, and they're dipping off to the east as well. And those initial drill results, which are on this slide here, are from Tenera East. So if that starts to hang together quite well, and we can delineate additional resources in this zone, obviously that's going to have a material impact on stripping ratio from an open pit perspective, because instead of moving waste, we're now getting to put some of that material through a plant and get paid for it. And likewise, a little bit further out here off this section is Drone Hill, but again, the rocks are still dipping east, so that actually sits underneath stratigraphically the Tenera Deposit. And again, we've only got results from the initial hole that we drilled some months ago back at Drone Hill, but we hit the host rocks. Geos think they missed the main target there, but they hit the host rocks and they had quite an attractive drill intercept. I think it was about 15 metres at 1.5 grams or something from memory. So essentially what that's telling us is where those host rocks exist and they've been hit by these structures, there's gold in them and they're well mineralised, and just the sheer volumes of gold through the system from an exploration perspective are quite astounding. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us to delineate all that, obviously, and but there's a very keen focus on expanding the Tenera resource that makes an economies of scale level, if you like, to meet a financial decision to build a mine here.
Superb, thank you. And another question from the audience from Lawanza Quince is he's asking about the extracted gold that you've got, and he's saying, is it quantified by fire assay on site, or is it carried out by a third-party lab?
Yeah, so all of our assay work is done by ALS laboratories in Santiago. So they essentially take ownership of the sample from our site and it gets shipped off to their laboratory in Santiago, where they do the sample preparation and do a fire assay on those samples.
Brilliant. Thanks, Zeff. Again, very exciting stuff. And I don't know if you've got any more time for any more investor meetings, but I know that you're on the platform for the next few days if anybody wants to get into touch with Zeff and ask him some more questions on that. So thank you very much. We're now going to move on to our final update. And this one's from Max Tuesley, who's the managing director of Culpeo Minerals. Max is a geologist with 30 years of experience. He's done base metals and gold exploration and mining. He's got a proven track record of successful projects and team management, both within Australia and internationally. He's worked in Mongolia, Sudan, Laos, and the Philippines. He spent 7 years with Xstrata in senior management roles with a focus on their Australian copper operations, including the Ernest Henry IOCG project. I believe he's joining us today from the Philippines en route to Chile. So yeah, we'll hand you over to Max, the Managing Director of Culpeo Minerals.
Yeah, thanks, Simon, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. We're a relatively new company. We're about to list on the ASX. We've just finished our IPO. We've had a lot of interest in the IPO. We were oversubscribed. So we've ended up raising 6 million Australian dollars already to go, and obviously not drilling yet, but we hope to be on the ASX next week on the 8th of September, and not long after that, or on that day, we should be drilling on site. We've got a drill rig ready to go, and all of our geologists and field assistants are just waiting for that green light to head to site. So what I'll do today is just quickly give you an overview of the company, and an overview of our flagship project, Patakas, that we don't have a lot of time, so we'll just go through those two things today. So similar to Tesoro, we're a Chile-focused company. We're looking at copper. We like copper. Going back to Deborah's opening remarks, I think everyone sort of understands the importance of copper going forward. The amount of copper required in the electrification of the world. So we like Chile. Chile's the #1 copper producer. We believe there's a lot of potential, particularly in the coastal region of Chile, near the coast. The copper systems there tend to be IOCG style. They tend to be higher grade than the sort of typical massive porphyry copper deposits. So we think that there's a lot of opportunity there for something that a medium-sized mining company can sort of tackle from an exploration point of view, and also bring into development if we do have success. Las Patakas, our flagship project, has a lot of known mineralisation. There's a lot of outcropping mineralisation. There's copper over a strike length of up to 6 kilometres. There is some historic drilling, which had substantial intersections. We have some walk-up drill targets based on that historic drilling, but also based on some recent geophysics that we undertook on the project. We do have a strong board and management. Obviously, Seth Reeves and Jeff McNamara, who are involved in Tesoro, are also involved in our company. So very experienced guys when it comes to Chile. So we're sort of leveraging off the back of some of that experience, and also some of those connections that the guys have made in country, which has been quite beneficial for us. We've been able to have a look at a lot of projects early on. We've probably been able to see some projects that other companies may not be able to sort of that might not come over their desk. So we're pretty happy with what we've been able to look at. And obviously the Patakas and Quelle on our two major projects are pretty significant from a known copper point of view. Just on Patakas, is a large tenement holding. We're only about 15 kilometres south of the Candelaria IOCG deposit, owned by Lundin Mining, which is a billion-tonne ore body at about a 0.8% copper equivalent. So a significant IOCG deposit in the district, and also a significant IOCG sort of on the world sort of comparison table as well. So we're in a very prospective area. We do have the same stratigraphy as Candelaria and the same structural setting. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of historic drilling with a lot of mineralisation already defined, but not a lot of systematic approach to the previous exploration. So since we've taken ownership of the project, we've completed a very comprehensive geophysical survey, which surprisingly the previous explorers had not done any geophysics. So that geophysics has enabled us to come up with some new targets as well as those sort of old historic drilling areas. So the new targets are quite substantial. You'll notice on the slide there's a large geophysical anomaly in the southern part of the project area. That is got a dimension of about 500 by 600 metres. So it's an Ernest Henry size target, which Ernest Henry is about 200 million tonne. So it's got the same sort of geometry and dimensions as Ernest Henry. Luckily for us, it's never been drilled. The previous guys drilled sort of on the edge of the anomaly, but they didn't do any drilling into the anomaly itself. And then you can see that on the left-hand side of the screen there. We've got a cross-section based on our recent dipole-dipole geophysical survey. You'll see the historic drilling on the periphery of the main anomaly, but the main anomaly itself has not been drilled. That will be the focus of our maiden drilling program, which will start, as I mentioned, next week. Just to cap off and give people with a little bit of geological sort of background, a little bit more on the analogies with Candelaria, you'll see the map on the left-hand side of the slide there, just showing the position of Patarcus. It's only about 15 kilometres south of the Candelaria mine. Both projects are located within the Atacama Fault. The Atacama Fault is a large structural system that runs up the spine of the coastal region of Chile. It's a very important structure for the localization of copper deposits, particularly IOCG deposits in Chile. And within that structure itself, some of the higher grade mineralization is controlled by fault splays that are coming off that main north-south feature. You can see there that Candelaria sits adjacent to one of these fault splays, and the Patarcus project is also associated with one of these northwest fault splays. So we believe we have a lot of potential at Patarcus to discover a significant IOCG deposit. And just capping off on the other half of that slide is a cross section through the Candelaria deposit at the top part of the screen, and then a cross section based on the geophysics of Patarcus. So you'll see a similar geometry there where the main anomaly in the geophysics is sitting sort of at depth with some smaller, more the more redder anomaly there near the surface. So those features will be the target of this initial drilling program that we intend to complete. So we have 3,200 metres already designed at Patarcus. That drilling will start next week, as I said. Our second project, Quelon, we will be drilling that project before the end of the year. So that's all from me.
Superb, Max. Congratulations on the IPO. And yeah, thanks for that presentation. I think we're going to come back to our two investor panelists again and ask them for their thoughts or their questions. We'll mix it up this time, John, and we'll come to you first and ask you if you've got any thoughts or comments for Max.
Sure. Look, yeah, got a bunch of questions, but perhaps just a couple of them. One on the corporate side, that if you could talk about what the percentage interest ownership is of the Patarcus project, and look on the geophysical side, I noticed it looked like from that plan that it was a coincident mag high with a chargeability high. And there was also a mention of conductivity. So have you run EM and or gravity there as well?
Yeah, John, very good questions. Look, that and well, just onto the anomaly initially. that anomaly is a gradient array IP anomaly. So it's a methodology of doing IP, but sort of more of a surface survey, looking at the top 100 to 150 meters. It works very similar to a ground magnetic survey, lets you cover quite a lot of ground quickly, but doesn't see a huge distance into the ground itself. So the large anomaly is a gradient array IP anomaly. Then we followed that up with a dipole IP survey, which enabled us to see a little bit deeper and to find those deeper targets. So interestingly enough, it's an IOCG prospect. We have not undertaken the ground mag at this point. That's something that we will do in the future. And we probably will consider some gravity, but initially our focus is on doing a little bit more of the gradient array IP. We've found that to be extremely useful, and obviously the ground mag and gravity will follow at some point. But yeah, certainly a little bit more geophysics to be done there. On the ownership of the project, we currently own 58% of that project. We purchased the initial 50% off a ex-Chilean government exploration fund, and we've earned another 8% into the project due to the fact that we did complete that comprehensive geophysical survey. So the deal is structured quite nicely in the fact that the majority of the earning is related to expenditure into the ground itself. So hence why we would like to get the drill rig down there ASAP. Obviously, we will drill some meters. That'll earn us another 15% into the project, and then we have a couple of other milestones after that to reach the 85% ownership.
Great, thanks, Max.
Okay, thanks, Max. Thanks, John. Yeah, I'd also just like to come to Deborah and ask her if she's got any questions for this.
Yeah, thank you, and congratulations on the IPO. I actually had a similar question on the ownership, but you've taken care of that one. But one other that came to mind, and it's obviously not going to be immediate for you at this stage, but was around water, which is obviously important ultimately for in particular copper operations, and there have been issues of water scarcity in Chile. So I was just interested in understanding some of the infrastructure associated with the site and access to water.
Yeah, that's a good question, Deborah, and that's one of the reasons that we like this coastal belt of Chile. We're only probably 40 to 50 kilometres from the coast, so we can utilise the desalination process for the supply of water. Obviously, the other good thing about being this close to the coast is we do have electricity within sort of 10 to 15 kilometres of the project site. We do have other copper processing facilities nearby, smelters and other options in that regard as well. So again, that's why we have chosen to be near the coast. We've sort of shied away for going up into the Andes and shied away from those billion-ton low-grade porphyries. We much prefer the smaller footprint of a higher grade, IOCG. I think that's very important if you want to, get something into production.
Great, thank you.
Brilliant. Well, that's just bringing us up to the 5-minute mark, and then we'll be that'll be rounding us off for the hour. But that's been really, really interesting in terms of very different projects and very different sort of stages and stuff. But I hope everyone's enjoyed that. I'd like to thank our sponsors very, very much: Rincon Resources, Tesoro Resources, and Culpeo Minerals. I'd like to also thank our panelists, all of them, but also Deborah Caudle from Societe Generale and John Forwood from Lowell Resources Funds Management. If you are interested in following up with any of the mining companies, then please do get into contact with them, and this will all be published again online shortly. But as I always say, if you're developing mines or exploring, good luck with your mines. And if you're investing, good luck with your money. And we'll see you again at Mines and Money. Thank you.
Simon.
Thanks,
Thanks so
Simon.
much, Simon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.